Necropolis Rio session 15. I need to constantly refresh myself because it's been a while, and we're getting on with the numbers as well. Like 15 sessions, that's quite a bit. So last time we had a flashback it includes a bunch of information, but most of the sort of on-screen action was in sort of shogunate Japan in the 1700s, as the shogunate had just grown wary enough of the Westerners and their pretty aggressive preaching of Christianity to both ban the non-bond trade with the Westerners and Christianity, basically. So they pushed both of these out. Well, not the religion part that would go underground, but that was where our last session was set, and we fought alongside Amakusa Shiro, who was the sort of figurehead 17-year-old boy of the Shimabara Rebellion, the sort of last big sort of concentrated army that was whittled down and eventually destroyed at Hara Castle. And we experienced some interesting interactions, because not only were Khufu and Sobek remembering this flashback life, but they also had a commentating voice from nowhere, sort of intruding on their memory, their reverie, sort of, and also sort of inserted itself as almost like an absence of a person inside their reverie. And by the end, we determined that we would have another flashback. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And I know that, John, yeah?
I was going to ask, speaking of the sort of presence that was like interjecting into the memory, and we sort of ended up last session with saying like, oh, perhaps it was like the Bible we'd kept, that we'd sort of looked at that and that triggered off this memory in us. I know we're doing like another flashback, but like in modern day, as we're like doing this, like, oh yeah, I remember like ancient Japan. Are we aware that this presence has been sort of like intruding on our memories? And if so, like, is there any, because obviously we weren't actually playing through it like in character, we were just remembering it. Are we aware of like anyone being there going like, hey, so is that actually how it went down in Japan, or was it literally just like a sort of voice in our heads?
It's just a voice, and it stops being a thing after you stop sort of your reverie of the period, inspired by the fact that you have Amakusa Shiro's like printed in Japanese Bible, which from the period, not a lot of those survive, is my understanding. So that's sort of like a very nice cultural relic, as well as an actual vestige. But there's no presence here. No one's talking into your heads. It seemed to be confined to the act of remembering the life.
Also, I've done like my Matrix thing where like we stopped doing it and I'm like, hey, I know Japanese.
Yeah. And you're muted, Sobek, by the way.
It's okay. I was just amusing myself with Khufu's arigato.
So I think what will happen is, and we haven't discussed this or used it at all, but there is a feature in your Tomb Temple complex which you paid for, and I've sort of taken it into account because we haven't used it as it's sort of supposed to be used, but I've taken it into account of how we deal with the XP, which we haven't done on camera at all because it's not that interesting as bookkeeping. But you have, as a feature of your Tomb Temple complex, you have sort of wall mural, which functions as something that the Arisen call a mirage, which inspires, memory, I suppose, in the Arisen. And I suppose we start with you again, like just staring at each other with Khufu holding up the Bible, and just like in recognition of, well, that just happened. um, is there something you would like to talk about here before we move on?
I don't think necessarily talk about, but I think part of the sort of remembrance for Khufu will have been, as we've sort of opened this Bible, and obviously he's not really seen sort of any Japanese writing before, it'll probably be sort of looking at that and then realising like he can read it, which is what sort of like triggered off the memory, and him sort of like saying, oh, I remember when we got this in like ancient Japan, and then I presume it's been like a back and forth between Khufu and Sobek, you know, sort of filling in the details, because we'll both remember different bits with differing degrees of clarity.
And that's the thing as well. You both remember the same things. You find out, like you go in thinking we need to fill each other in, but it's pretty like 95% in sync.
We remember the voice as well.
Yeah. That is clear to you as anything else.
So I think, yeah, probably we'll want to discuss that. So I imagine like when we've sort of finished our remembrance, I'll turn to Sobek and I'll say the voice that spoke to us while we were casting our minds back into events long gone. I didn't recognise it. Did you?
When she used, I just seem to understand it. It appeared to have knowledge of us, though, like past and present, perhaps our future as well.
Indeed, there were several times when it prompted us or corrected us while we were remembering things, which seems a little strange if the presence, whatever it may be, was not there. How would it know that our memories were incorrect?
At first, I thought it was in judgment of us, but the more it spoke, it seemed more contemplative. If I'm honest.
Indeed, first I thought it might have been some aspect of like one of our own psyches, our own remembrances, but it seemed to be questioning our own memories and prompting us, which, if it was a part of our own memories, how could it have done that?
How can it remember things that we can know about ourselves?
Indeed.
Perhaps it's a fragment of a REM itself that we have somehow come into contact with, and it's going through our history whenever we came into contact.
Well, since I'm assuming that like this conversation is happening sort of fairly shortly after we've done the whole remembering, I'm like, Sobek, I believe you have the ability to detect magics and such like. Would you consent to casting your gaze around to see if we've been affected by any sort of enchantment or?
Of course, brother. No, that's not a problem.
And obviously, I'll look around with my death sight in case it's any like necromancy or anything like that.
All the sights.
Yeah, clicking the predator visor. Yeah. There's no undue death related activity going on, but Sobek, you follow an impression of your god sight to a different place in your complex, and you find that the place you're drawn to is the corridor bit where the mirage wall is, and
that's what leads into the people place where the non-arisen can go.
You're free to position it wherever you like. So basically, we know that there's sort of three main areas. There's the tomb area,
yep,
the temple area, and then the way out into the sort of historical area where the tourists are. So where is the mirage wall?
I would say it's somewhere between where the tourists are and the actual temple.
Right. Okay. So you're drawn sort of to the exit, towards the exit of your
Yeah.
tomb temple complex, and there is the Mirage Wall. Khufu, are you following? Yeah. So you get to the corridor and you see that it's shimmering light, sort of golden, with the inscriptions on it, with the depictions, the sort of carvings on the wall are ever so softly shining through, and
I get a trace here, brother, but I'm not entirely sure what this is. What this is? I'm looking at like the magic. Is it
Well, we know the
Sechem?
we know the mirage is a part of our tomb, and it's there to aid us with our memories. Both of us have devoted considerable time and effort to casting our minds back recently. Perhaps the enchantments, the magics woven into the mirage have taken the form of this presence that we felt, in order to prompt us, to spur us to remember things as they were, not as we wish they were. I'm merely hypothesizing here. I'm not a great one for enchantments of these sorts.
Seems. I could believe that. I could. But why is it showing itself now?
and as you're contemplating this, it gets more intense to the point where Khufu, you can actually see it now. There's physical light coming out of the wall, and Sobek, you are sort of witnessing this weird golden starlight
Some
play on the
sunglasses on.
wall underground.
Is it
And
a word, a shape, a thing?
no, it's the carvings on the wall. So like there's indentations, pictures, carvings, and those are sort of emitting.
Is it a particular image?
No, it's everything. Everything that's a part of the mirage is sort of lighting up, and as you're looking at the thing, and Khufu, you can start to see like, oh, there's a light coming out of the wall now. You are inspired or plunged, however you want to call it, into another memory. So we the light intensifies until everything's white, and it fades into black once again, and we move on to the part where the oceans drank Atlantis, and there's the voiceover period. So, for centuries, the twins. This is for us as like witnesses of the game. So, our background information for this flashback. For centuries, the twins have been attended by a warrior society functioning as their cult. What started as a mystery cult in the Roman legions turned into Germanic warband and eventually a series of knightly orders in France and the Iberian Peninsula. This would change substantially for the twins as well as their friend Cosmos as they were journeying through the Levant. Always on the move due to the heavy burden they carry. In the shadow of a shattered ancient outpost, they hunted for a relic of the scribes, an Eremite calligraphy brush, and would come upon the find at the same time as another arisen, who merely introduced himself as the bearer of the brush and as a Seshahebs. So he's a scribe as well as you, Sabek.
I outrank him though.
Not at this time, you don't. Well, we don't know, of course. The bearer of the brush had followed them for a time and had drawn them with the relic to the ruins. And we have a scene where the twins and Cosmos are standing in this shadowed ruin, and there's a man, which in your memory's eye is sort of indistinct. Like he's clearly a person wearing sort of nondescript clothing and has features that you just don't remember anymore. But it's not, you realize it's not a particular like trick on his behalf. You just don't, for whatever reason, your memory doesn't have them anymore in it. But he looks like any man is what your memory draws him as. And the scene continues as the bearer of the brush speaks. You write in remembrance of those who have passed, and in remembrance of the world entire. I will give you the brush, or the way to remember. And the trio chose the path of memory. And the bearer of the brush spoke, be like a man, not a god. And we move on to a different scene in this preamble. The twins had parted ways with their warrior attendants, sending them back across the sea to their homelands to tend to cult matters there. And the fate led the trio to a village by a modest stream coming down from the mountains to the north, to a village called Sarda. I'll put that in the chat. They settled there and became the caretakers and elders to the people of Sarda. And the people of Sarda became their thankful friends and followers. Sarda had been a fortified outpost in ancient times, and to the twins' amazement, the locals could help them excavate a length of stone wall from the ancient times, upon which was inscribed an utterance of Iramite sorcery, what you call now the Seeds of Life. Using this utterance, the twins and Cosmot shaped Sarda into a fertile oasis, and the abundance blessed the people, and with plenty to eat, drink, and work with. The Seeds of Life allow you to basically plant like living things into the ground with your sorcery. The twins and Cosmo served Sarda, and Sarda served them for many long years. And they refined their memories and sense of self, and while they paid lip service to the judges and occasionally journeyed some distance to gather a relic, once the rumors reached them, they focused on the village. Other times, you've consumed relics to stay your descents, to spend more time tending to your village and your flock. There's a forbidden cave by the stream where you've hidden a golden box carrying a relic of terrible power. It symbolized your burden and your place in the service of the judges, and you've laid it down and made it secret. No one may enter there. Sarda attracted some wandering souls over the years, and with the rising population, the three of you established, among other things, a tradition of literacy and spirituality with a school to teach reading and writing, as well as a temple for honoring the dead and catacombs for burying them. And that's when we get a title card, Sarda Village, 1191. So we open up into this quite lush, surprisingly lush village by a stream coming down from the north. It must be maybe a couple hundred people at least living there, sort of quite a good-sized village. Now, I have a couple of questions here for you to establish yourselves within the context just given in the preamble. So we'll start with Sobek. So who are you? You are awake in Sarda Village, 1191. This is what I've just spoken of is the background to all of this. Who are you and what are you tending to now? What are you doing in Sarda?
Oh man, I probably. Do they? How aware of the village of what we are?
You're sort of free to decide that. So, however you've done it, basically Sarda is your cult now. You have a different cult back in Europe, but you haven't seen them in quite a while. But Sarda is currently your cult as well.
I imagine I would probably be a purveyor and a kind of generous librarian, I suppose, would be
Hmm.
the idea. Whereas I've cultivated knowledge in this place, the written word, and I've spread it as best I can. Being this, I haven't probably seen a scroll for several centuries in this area, or definitely decades. And this is my like little bit of civilization. Well, Khufu tends to the dead, but the dead don't converse mainly with anyone else other than Corfu. So I tend to the living and their education. Since that was
Right.
probably so
So,
like I don't know if like after so many years I kind of I die and another grand librarian is
mhm.
elected and it just happens to be me but with a different
Yeah, similar.
different look.
Right. So Sawbeck is sort of not out in the open, I suppose,
Yeah.
with this arrangement. Now, Khufu, there's one thing that I'll point out specifically for you before you get to like establish exactly however you want Khufu in this context here. There's one additional detail, which is that your time in Sarda has enkindled enough of your memory and your humanity that by some miracle of fate, you found yourself having fallen in love with a woman called Talaye. I'll put that in chat. Who is one of the priests at Sarda. So yeah, same deal. Who are you? What are you doing? What's going on with Khufu?
Okay, so I'm imagining that I've probably been involved with the sort of inspiring the like the traditions of honouring the dead in Sarda, which is probably how I originally met Talia. Obviously, as a priestess, she'd be involved in that sort of thing and rituals and whatever. I imagine that over time, I've sort of. It sounds like we've been here for a fair old while.
Yeah, yeah.
Over time, I imagine I've instilled a sort of probably like a yearly festival in a sort of like a Day of the Dead sort of style, where families go to like the catacombs and the gravesides of their relatives, and they do that thing, where they sit down and they like eat with the dead relatives as though they're there and they remember them. They put pictures and that sort of stuff around to remember them. And I think given that I've got that sort of utterance where I can like summon that like ghost light that sort of makes visible ghosts in the area to anybody basically. I imagine that the preparations leading up to this ritual, I sort of do that utterance like away from people so I don't like cause them to go mad, and then have the sort of light as part of the celebrations. If there are any actual ghosts there of like ancestors, which over the course of time I imagine there'll be at least a few, that they can on that one day actually converse with their living relatives who come to like pay respects to them. But I'll have made it clear in the sort of superstitions and the sort of the ritualistic sort of surroundings of this ceremony that like not all people sort of linger on, some pass on to something else. So basically, so like people won't turn up and be like, oh, my grandfather's not here, I must have been doing something wrong. So, but it'll be a whole part of the ritual, like as long as you like remember people and you honour them and those that went before and the deeds they did that led to you, then you will in turn be remembered and no one is ever truly lost. And I imagine I'll be sort of seen as probably an assistant of the priesthood, or possibly like an old hermit who like is like the caretaker of like the catacombs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of part of this ceremony when they do it on whatever day of the year it is.
Yeah.
And you know, like people from the village all sort of troop up to these grave sides, and they all sit down and sort of talk to the departed as though they're still there, and they tell their young family members about the people who've passed on and stuff like that.
Like it. So, what you both can, of course, contribute. What is the sort of religious situation in Savda? Of course, you are free to have just try to impose an influence with like Iramite beliefs and whatnot, but if we want to use like a local base for it, we could have Islam, of course. There's quite a bit of like Orthodox Christianity in the area. There's Roman Catholics have been doing a whole bunch of crusading around these parts. And there's smaller sects, of course. But what's the how do people do religion in Sarda? Is it like you need to be this, or this, or is it like only one religion is true? Is it the Iramite religion? Like, what's up?
I think for myself, I'll have probably not tried to influence like religion majorly. So like whatever religion folks have is fine with me. But I'll have sort of, because most religions have a thread of like, at least sort of like honouring the dead or like burying them or whatever. So
Yep.
I'll have sort of piggybacked to this ceremony on the idea of, on those ideas that were already existing in whatever religions people follow. So it won't be a case like you rock up to like the sort of Day of the Dead ceremony and it's like, oh, I'm afraid you're Roman Catholic, no ceremony for you.
Yeah.
It'll be a case of like, whatever religion you are when you come to this ceremony, we're all here to like honour those who came before us and to remember them, and we should all be getting behind that, whatever religion you are, because without these people and your ancestors, you wouldn't be here now. And when you pass on, your descendants will remember you and honour you.
Right. Sabek, anything to
I
Up
think
there?
for Sorbek's case, he will probably lean more towards the Roman Catholic side, mainly because
that's certainly where you came from.
exactly, and that's kind of like he saw. I mean, if we disagree slightly, he saw that the Romans were attempting to rebuild Irem without really knowing that they were. So they must have risen were involved in it, and there was aspects of it that reminded him of his home.
So I was going to suggest, like, obviously Khufu and Sobek will have, and obviously the Dark One, Kazmud, will have discussed.
That's not quite his title in.
Hey, that's what he was called in the last flashback.
Yeah.
But obviously would have discussed this, and I think as we've been talking, and like we said, we remember like Rome and they were trying to build a new Irem and stuff like that. I think possibly you'll have got the impression that Khufu's sort of viewpoint on all that is maybe that the problem with Rome is that they tried to start off too big, and they got the Roman Empire expanded so quickly on the immortal scale of things that they sort of like lost sight of like the dream of Irem and what it was supposed to be. So, and the way that sort of ended was obviously fairly disastrous. So sort of Khufu's seeing this as almost like a second chance to like try that again, but sort of starting smaller, so we can make sure that the sort of like the promise and the sort of dream of Irem doesn't get like diluted like it did in Rome.
A strong foundation.
Yeah, so although like Khufu's not like, yes, this village is going to be the stronghold of a new Irem, he's getting to that opinion now, especially since he's mixing more with the humans and he's starting to see more value in them. That he's maybe like, maybe we don't have to like rebuild Irem. What if we just honour the principles that Irem stood for? Because times have changed. The world as it is now, or as it is in the flashback, isn't the world where Irem existed. Many things have changed, and we know that nothing aside from us, including Irem, lasts forever, because Irem doesn't still exist. So perhaps we don't need to try and rebuild it. Perhaps what we need to do is we need to take the best bits of what Irem stood for and then sort of adapt them for like modern day. And as long as we continue to honour what it stood for, like the sort of pillars that it stood for, then perhaps that's a better thing than just trying to rebuild it constantly and failing.
There is wisdom in that.
2016. I wonder if you still desire to rebuild the pillars.
I feel like that's directed at Corfu more than it is me. So.
Well, I think sort of like in 2016, and just a quick question: when we're answering this presence, do we are we speaking out loud in modern day, or are we just thinking it and we
no,
all hear it?
It's sort of like direct, like thought transmission type deal.
So like if I think an answer, oh sorry, mate.
Sorry, I was just saying, can we see the thing every time it speaks to us?
Yeah, there's always, if you sort of look around with your being conscious in the remembrance that this presence is talking to you, you can usually spot it in, like, it's standing off to the side where a person could be, but there's the obscure smudge almost.
I imagine sort of like I'll be sort of responding to the presence, obviously, like Sobek could be hearing it, and I'll be saying, I still believe that there were a lot of things that were, from what I remember, that were good about Irem, good solid foundations, as Sobek once said so long ago, that have much still of value in this strange modern world, but I do not believe simply repeating the same cycle of creation and destruction has a great deal of merit to it. If, after all, if we were to build, even if we were to build an exact copy of Irem somehow in the modern world, the world itself and the people have changed, and it would not be the same city, even if we replicated it down to the very bricks and mortar that once held it together. And then I imagine we sort of like we cut to like a little sort of memory scene where it's Khufu and like Talia sort of like walking through like the sort of grass or whatever, some like nice area in the village, and sort of almost to himself, but like the others will be able to hear the presence and Sobek. I'll be saying, I feel as my memories are returning that given the time and the effort we spent to stay in the village of Sarda, I feel that I somehow understand it. I don't approve, but I understand more of what drove Kazmut to the lengths he would eventually go to. Perhaps once my memories are clearer, I will seek him out, and there can be a reconciliation of sorts. For, as I've said to Sobek on a number of occasions, we are, over our long lives, we are immortals. It is petty to hold a grudge for a single event or a series of events that lasts for eternity. After all, if we were to hold a grudge against every immortal who had wronged us even once in the past, our existence would be a very lonely one.
Yes, this is where it all started, wasn't it? You looked away for a moment, and the moment turned into decades. And you enjoyed it. And with that, I think we see another sort of, like, this is like jumping around sort of the village of Sarda. And we see Kazmut, who is dressed in sort of quite fancy, almost like I'm going out to represent type clothing. And he's shaking hands with what are obviously not from Sarda folk. And they have a whole train of horses and camels. They are laden with goods. Kazmut is shaking ostensibly the leader's hand, and they get to doing business. And there's a sequence of these small snippets showing Cosmos almost being the sort of like envoy of Sarda. Like he's the one who like goes out to the neighboring regions to like, hey, we can grow a lot of fruit along our like fertile land, so we're going to trade our fruit for your wood or something like that. And he's sort of, the idea is that you remember is that sort of Cosmut was doing this while you were attending to your chosen portions of it, but he was sort of focused on connecting Sarda to the sort of region, the wider world, to other people, and sort of spreading the I don't know if Matthew can hear us right now, but the one of the things here is that all of you will have now recalled the utterance, the Seeds of Life, as you have in Sarda village, you have the excavated and now a prominently displayed piece of ancient fortification wall which has the thing on it.
Now, when you say recalled,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that doesn't mean that when we get back to modern day, we'll be like, "Oh my god, we possess this utterance."
No, you do. You learned it now.
We do. Right? Okay.
Yeah, you remember the Seeds of Life now that you recall your life in the village of Sarda. So that's on page. We might as well look at it because Matthew's Matthew's off now. So page 131 on the rule book there. It starts.
Page 131. Seeds of Life. So, Tier 1 allows you to become resistant to harm from plants and plant products. You ignore injury from like environmental factors and stuff like that. Rolled actions attempted to cause a harm with plant matter have +2 to the target number. You can also make an instant action to draw poison out of a living person's body.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Very useful.
So that's pretty good. I don't think I can use Tier 2. I don't think I've got Ren 2.
Yeah.
Matthew probably will have because he's like the Ren daddy as far as I remember.
Yeah, he's got all the Ren, so.
So Tier 2 for like Matthew. Do unleash it in any natural terrain. Whatever the location, fate chooses what grows from those edible plants that can survive there, assuming irrigation is available. You can incorporate a specific type of tree in addition to fate's offerings by striking the staff with the ground with a staff carved from the appropriate type of wood. Well, that's pretty cool. Unleashing this tier together with the preceding tier grows a garden of sacred panaceas. Anyone who eats a meal from this fruit while afflicted with a disease gets a reflexive cure attempt. That's pretty nifty.
Yeah, and we see in the memory as well, Khufu was able to use that at the time, but you have sustained some injury to your soul since then.
That's alright. I was wondering what to spend my XP on. It looks like Ren 2 is like coming up fast.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a note of that because I like buying stuff that like links in.
Yeah. So Matthew, I don't know how much of that you heard. You're muted, so I'm not hearing anything.
I'm double muted there. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, I could hear you guys. I just had to step away for a sec. Yeah, we found an utterance while we've been... Do we find it at this location?
Yeah. One of the, like, sort of things in the beginning of Sarda was that you, of course, made friends with the people. You formed your cult so that they can help you, you can help them. And you learned that, this used to be an outpost, like, a long time ago. People don't have any reference, but they knew where the old stuff was, and you coordinated an excavation, and there's an ancient like outpost wall made of like large blocks of stone which has the Iramite utterance called the Seeds of Life inscribed on it. So you have learned this in the past in 1191.
Do we believe this is an actual piece of Irem here? Or was this like a tomb of another arisen?
See, Cybeck, I've just got like the level 1 where I'm like, I can ignore environmental factors, whatever. Whereas you were like, your Ren 2. You can be like, behold my garden of earthly delights.
What I find really interesting on a philosophical level while I'm in my library is with my, obviously with my chair made of, natural sadder wood,
Hmm.
is that while Khufu's been tending the dead of this town and the spirits, he has found life, both in love and in gifts
Hmm.
of Rem.
And as well, the
How
first tier
interesting.
allows you to take wooden sticks or similarly elongated objects. If you spend a willpower point, when it strikes a solid surface, it turns into a serpent. So
What page is it on again?
Khufu
Sorry?
can make serpents.
131 map.
1, 3.
Yeah. But
I'm
this
reading
is, and Khufu had a different amount of Ren back then, and this is the key to why you made Sarda work as well as it did. You found the utterance and you used it to sort of everyone's benefit, because you don't need food, but these people do, and they can trade it as well. And with the three of you using the utterance, and there's a stream nearby as well, you grew the gardens of Sarda.
I imagine like back in modern day, as we're both sort of remembering this, and we're obviously talking backwards and forwards as we remember this. I'll be saying to the Sobek, given that most of what we do now is secretive and kept away from the eyes of mortals in the most part, does it strike you as odd, brother, as it does me, that our memories now flash back to this time when we acted more openly, when we used the abilities, the utterances that we had to make a small village into a paradise, or as near to it as we could. I find it odd that in this modern year of 2016 that
Right. I was just trying to get the greater context there. I was like, okay, you're talking to me from 2016. Okay.
I find it odd in this modern year of 2016 that everything is so secretive and concealed, that both of our memories should pull us back to an earlier time when we can see the benefits of us choosing to act more openly, to take a more direct route, to use our utterances, our abilities for the good of the mortals.
Much has changed, but much has stayed the same as well, brother. You forget that in all these times, only a small percentage of these people and ourselves have been. Even we are bound by our memory. There is so much they do not know. There is so much they are ignorant of. It is through our efforts and through our maintained efforts that they gain enlightenment. Apart from a few who find answers for themselves, they're just glimpsing at the majesty of a Rem's teaching. They don't truly understand what it is they find, but their actions have consequences, of course. But things are the same today as they were back then. The majority of the people have no idea of the truth out there. But yet, technologically, yes, I suppose that they have more tools now.
Indeed, yet I draw parallels between what we did in Sarda and the small village cult of my guildmaster in these modern times. Perhaps a small community that is tended by the Arisen acting as protector and guardians, as we did long ago in Sarda. Perhaps it is not such a strange dream to have in these modern days.
Are you wishing that we use our gifts to better these people?
Well, it seems to me that
I thought your concern was mostly with the departed.
indeed you are correct, but the departed are departing is simply the natural end of one part of a mortal's journey. We through our cult, through the organisation, we have attempted to preserve areas of history, to prevent them from being lost, peoples, places, etc. But perhaps we should think less on preserving what once was, and instead strive to create something new.
Soderbergh has got kind of a, the half curl smile as he looks at his brother. He's like, "You're starting to sound like an alchemist, bro."
But at the same time, you do realize, especially once the voice pipes in, yet the both of you committed yourself to the stones and the earth and the people of Sarda for a long time, and you used your dead hands to grow something out of nothing.
That is true. Perhaps what we have been doing up until now, my brother, is simply treading water. We have simply been maintaining the status quo while we have looked for another direction, and perhaps our memories, as we now recall Sarda, perhaps our own memories attempt to provide us with this direction whilst our conscious minds struggle to achieve it.
Your thoughts are skirting around a dangerous notion.
Yet that was not what you thought at the time either. For you did not, at this time, fear the scourge of the judges, did you?
Indeed, and whatever, you are correct, my brother. It is a dangerous notion, but tell me, if you will, from your memory, what was ever won during the long history of this world that did not have an element of danger in it? In as more of my memory returns, I form the view that you can either have safety or you can create something. The destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. Perhaps all we have been doing in recent times is, whilst we believed we were acting in our best interest, perhaps all we have been doing is stagnating. I cannot deny the love I once felt for Talea any more than I can deny the fact that I am still proud of what we built in Sarda.
It was an accomplishment what we did there.
Indeed. And even if it only lasted for, and I cannot remember exactly how long Sarda lasted, but even if it only lasted for 100 years, 50 years, or even less, as mortals reckon time, it would have been a glorious thing for those mortals who may have spent their lives living there.
I was preserving knowledge when I was there. I was using an utterance that had been lost for we don't know how long. I felt I was doing the work I was supposed to.
Indeed, but you were not.
I do not beget you your passing fancy.
Indeed, but what I'm trying to say is that brother, you were not simply preserving knowledge while you were there. You were preserving knowledge, and you were using your gifts and the insight that knowledge gave you to better the lives of the people of Sarda.
Well,
After all,
that I was doing it right.
Did not our excavations, that search for more knowledge, lead to the rediscovery of the seeds of life, and to us be able to render Sarda alike to a paradise? Perhaps what we are missing in the modern world, we are still carrying. Perhaps what we're doing is simply a hollow echo of what we once did in Sarda. We still collect knowledge and we seek to preserve it, but seldom, unless we are directly challenged, do we actually act on it and seek to accomplish anything with it outside of the society of immortals to which we belong.
You seek for us to be proactive, and our nature is reactive.
Indeed, but
if I to wonder if this thought is the seed that was planted in Casmut that created his little rebellion.
Perhaps so, and whilst I think Casmut took it to a dark place, I would of course not sanction attacking other Arisen's cults, destroying their relics, anything along those lines. Perhaps he started off with like us. I'm sure his memory is not infallible. Perhaps he simply remembered a few aspects of what we once did and drew some erroneous conclusions from it, and perhaps those conclusions led him to the dark place in which he found himself. But simply because he took what was once a good thing and then walked down a dark path with that knowledge, that is not the fault of the knowledge itself. After all, you must be aware of the fact, Sobek, that there are many books over the course of mortal history that have led people to do terrible things in their name. But that is the fault of the people who read and interpret the knowledge. It is not the fault of the knowledge itself. Perhaps we should be looking more to provide guidance and assistance rather than simply gathering this knowledge for its own sake.
There is something noble in what you're saying. I see it, I do, but the problem is, Cthulhu, despite my memories being not complete, and that is one of the burdens of what we do, I do know that the gods are real, and I know that they, not necessarily what they explicitly want, but I know their displeasure.
Indeed.
And as if on cue, the voice says,
Yes, that is the nature of the scourge, isn't it? It distracts you from all this because this is forbidden to you.
and my apologies, there's a bit in the rules which I was looking for when we started this. I did not find it. I looked for it again and again. I did not find it. In true fashion, I found it by looking at another book which had a reference to the page number in the actual book. So raising your memory involves a chance of losing your second a little bit. So what we're gonna do right now, because this is just come up, we're gonna make a second roll in 2016.
Okay.
So just roll your blah, 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 blah. Let me see, because there's the special rules in Rio because of the fountain.
Indeed. Well, that's sweet dead one.
Yeah, because that helps you quite a bit.
So we need to make a roll here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
As the voice says that this is forbidden to you. All of this is forbidden to you.
I feel like we've got a good contrast in this current discussion.
See, I feel as well, because obviously previously, from Kufa's point of view, previously we've been like, no, this is forbidden, we should stay well clear of it. But now we're remembering a time when we didn't stay well clear of it, and obviously we are still here, like many years later. So like we didn't sort of skirt round the edge of the judges, and they were just like,
Yeah.
and that was us done.
Well, it's interesting,
Yep.
and I don't know if our Curse Master did this on purpose, but the person who strayed the most is possibly the one you'd expect to the least. Like the person who really mainly is concerned with the dead. So but he's the one that falls in love. I find that very interesting.
It's fate.
Fate, yeah.
Capital F, by the way.
I'm all about the fate.
Every
I
time
know all about it.
the mummy sphere mentions fate, it's capital F, and everyone else does the small case F, and that's not the same thing at all. Right, so let me look at this. So
What you need, boss? What you need?
mm,
If it's a memory roll,
no, it's a second roll. So
is this 2016 second?
2016, yes.
Cool.
As you're pondering, you're witnessing this memory, and you're discussing with Khufu and the presence about memories and like the will of the judges and their displeasure. Especially, you get the displeasure.
Or did I just invoke it by accident?
You don't know, but the presence says, as you mentioned, that you have known their displeasure. The presence mentions that.
Well, that's one of the things I find interesting about the game is despite not having full memory, we know for a fact that the gods exist.
Oh yes, because you're here.
Yeah.
The-
So it's like it's not a philosophical question for
No.
these characters.
Not at
They
all.
are a product of eating them. So
Yeah, and there is a chance of like in some parts of the timelines where a mummy might not realize that what the sort of quote unquote like the truth about gods is, because their memory is so low that they just don't know, and then they encounter people in the world and then adopt whatever they think and then work with that until of course eventually
their
they
memory
probably get
returns.
corrected. But there's a chance for mummies to be so amnesiac that just they will encounter some people and just adopt whatever they have because they have nothing themselves. So the fountain doesn't help with the roll itself. I just checked. It helps with you when you don't make rolls. If you just like, it helps you stay passively, but the roll itself is not affected. So roll as many dice as you have second.
Okay. I think it should work, right? Oh.
It might be a case where you have to roll the thing manually. I don't know.
I got 0 successes.
0 successes. Okay, let me
Is
pull
that
this.
bad? Is that good? I don't.
I have a mighty 1 success.
You can actually roll it from the sheet, John. If you just press second.
All right, cool.
And then press to sheet roll, it should normally work as well. I just give it a shot.
Nice.
Sometimes rolling low in this game is good. Not succeeding.
Yeah.
Good.
And this is one of those things.
Well, I'm assuming ones don't cancel on rolls. I don't think they do in new ones.
No, that's not a thing.
So yeah, so it's just 1 for me.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, the search function is agreeing to do what it's supposed to do. Okay, here we go. Right. So, yeah. So, unfortunately, for Khufu, you have 1/8 there. So Khufu, you lose one of your second. As
Do you know what it is? It's obviously because I am sort of speaking from a defensive point of the judges. You know, I'm the less sort of cheeky one of the two right now. I'm like, well, you know, we're not supposed to be doing this.
Well, I think as well we can draw a comparison where,
know,
like, the more Sechem you've got, like, the less human you tend to be. And we
that's very true.
Yeah, we know obviously that when you're at like your full Sechem, you are just like undead battering ram of like cosmic power.
Because when you were at 2 Sechem, I recall, Khufu, you decided to stand in a fort that you know was gonna fall, and you fought with a guy you barely knew.
Yeah. So perhaps it's just a kind of like, this is what I'm like when like more of me is present, because like my Sechem's low. Whereas perhaps what we've seen earlier, you know, where I'm just like, no, I'm all for the judges 100%, death magic all the way. Perhaps that's just like what I cling to when I don't remember anything else because I'm at high Sechem.
Ooh, I've just thought of something.
But yeah, you both of you feel Sobek, you still feel it, even though your second doesn't disappear. So it's not that drastic for you. But
My judge knows what I'm about.
Both of you
cool.
feel the absolute displeasure of the judges at the fact that you are basically currently just swimming in the river of your memory, and you're recalling all these things that they do not approve.
Do you not see, brother? There is a path. One can stray from it.
Indeed, but just because one strays from a path, does that mean that you can never find your way back to it?
That's what I keep telling you. We need to focus on getting the relics, getting that thing in that box. If we did not find it already, one in the
Yes,
one
curious. Curious, that box, isn't it? And you had it all the time in Sarda, in that cave,
What?
where you told no one to go to.
Well, it's too dangerous to take with us to Dumat. That's where we go, isn't it?
Hmm?
No, no. When we actually descend, we don't do it.
Yeah, so yeah, that is true. That was what we learned previously. That your whole thing is you have it because you don't know what to do with it. You don't want to destroy it because you don't know what's going to happen. Well, now you know that if artifacts get destroyed, its power is released, and usually that's very bad news because that creates amkata like spontaneously, and you whatever this is, you don't want to destroy it because that will be real bad times.
By comparison, by contrast, aren't we also supposed to like send relics to the judges?
Yes, and you also don't want to do that because you are aware that at the time you thought it was so accursed in nature that you now know because you remember the period in Japan and you remember now in Sarda that's at least 500 years you had this thing and you didn't know what to do with it because you don't want to break it and you don't want to take it to Duat with you because it's so accursed. You don't know what's going to happen if you give it to the judges because it's so bad.
I feel we found a compromise in this situation. For we could not risk ending the world. That is not why we are here. We're not here to destroy this place. But at the same time, we're not there to take something so foul to the judges that it could, I don't know what it could do in that place. So just keeping it contained seemed the best way around it. So
And yet we know that during the time we spent in Sarda, each of us consumed relics to prolong our time there.
It's something which you now condemn Cosmon for, isn't it?
Indeed, I'll say to the presence and obviously Sobek, and I would hope that if there is a chance of a reconciliation with Casmut, now my memory has returned, that I will attempt to effect such a reconciliation at the first opportunity. As a fellow Arisen, I am sure he will understand the effect that a partial memory can have on us.
Perhaps, but I still feel our intentions and why we were not punished as severely is because we weren't doing it for ourselves. We were doing it for another reason. There was a sense of selflessness that perhaps preserved our compass. We did not lose ourselves to this. We've still been able to rise again and do our duties. We have not wandered off into the wilderness like.
Is that not exactly what you did when you met the man in the ruins and you chose the path of memory? You sent your occultists away and you walked into the desert, seeking a mirage.
Why did we choose the path of memory?
Also, I find that although part of me, as I've said, knows that death is simply an inevitable part of life for mortals, I find that given that my memories of Talia have now returned, I find that less comforting than I once would have done. And I feel that I can more understand why some mortals fear death and the loss that it brings. After all, Talia was a woman I loved in Sarda, but from the very first I
What
knew
happened to her in the end? Did we leave after she passed?
and I'm going to try and sort of cast my memory back to like the last moment I had with her, and as I'm doing that, sort of on the voiceover, I'll be saying, from the first, even though I was in love with her, I would have known that she, as a mortal, would fade away and most likely disappear, whilst we would go on.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I have no evidence to back up that belief, whilst it is a comforting one. And
I remember, it's weird. I remember a trifling notion from back then, just a thought that I lost, but now it returns. I did wonder why this person, why this mortal. What was it about her that inspired you? What if she keeps coming back? What if this soul that intrigues you so returns to to this place, and we just can't remember, brother? And every time you encounter her, you lose your way.
I would
you
dearly love to believe what you are saying. However, as one who is steeped in knowledge of what comes after life, I believe that reincarnation is, for mortals, is at best a comforting fiction to lessen their fears of the darkness at the
For
end
example,
of
I
life.
used to be an alchemist. I don't tell people that. I don't bring it up that often.
Really?
Yes,
That is
it was.
interesting.
Even the presence is sassing you now.
Yeah, I do love a good sass session. What was I actually going to say? Oh yeah. So what I was about to say was this: is even though I was an alchemist, but now I'm a scribe. I have read so many tomes, and I have written thousands of books myself over our course of our lifetimes. But yet I've never read everything. I've never known every word, every language, every scrap of knowledge. I don't have it all. So Khufu, could it be that perhaps this person, you have seen them more than once? Maybe, perhaps.
Perhaps I cannot
Think
say.
really hard and try and remember if I've seen her again.
Perhaps I cannot say, but it is my belief that if such a thing were possible, given the span of the world, it would have happened at least a number of times, and other members of my guild would be aware of it.
I stayed to preserve the knowledge. The church, interestingly, if I recall, they were a great bastion of knowledge in those times. I wanted to try and have a little node inside her and preserve, especially medical, and what had come
Indeed.
before, the deeds of men, where we intersect, the deeds of the living.
Indeed,
preserved.
it's my belief that the souls of mortals pass on when they're finished with this life, and it is only their deeds, the memory of them, and what they leave behind that is their true legacy. And that is why, as ever, I've strove to preserve their deeds.
We are proof that people return to the mortal realm.
But we are not mortals. The only other immortal creatures that we have encountered, besides the Arisen, have been hideous blasphemies of creatures.
I'm waiting for the thing that sasses both and be like, that you could remember.
I would not wish that state on anyone.
On this we agree.
And like I say, now I'm going to try and think back to like my last moments with Talia.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you there. I didn't mean.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So something that I realized that the presence would have said is, for when we're talking about, like, yeah, this is you keep talking about the things that are forbidden, and you spend decades at least doing exactly that out of your own volition. And when Sobek sort of like, why did we choose the path of memory when the bearer of the brush was with us in the ruins, and we have the presence there in the darkness, in the dark of night, as you meet with the man. The presence says,
The faceless man offered you something that you did not have the opportunity to partake of before. And one of the foundational parts of all life, as we understand it, is curiosity. And that is especially true for someone like you, Sobek, who is cultivating the legacy of the name. If you are offered a relic, you've taken hundreds of those from the world, stolen them to Duat.
Return them home.
You are offered an alternative. What is there to risk? You know that there's more relics. But this, you have not had this before. And you chose exile into the desert, and you made an oasis. Not everyone has the strength to do that.
If you can hear me, I would be very curious to your name. But I suppose, and this is I guess the storyteller within me. After all, I surround myself with words. What does an arisen desire more than a relic?
And that is the question. What is your will?
Perhaps knowing where we came from, knowing how many times you've done this, is what we really needed. We wanted the curiosity, the desire to have all the pieces for once. It was too much for us to resist.
I must confess, brother, I find myself wondering, what is the point to our immortality if we stand apart whilst the world crumbles around us? Will we eventually find ourselves at the end of time stood on a lifeless rock, devoid of all the colour and the life that it now possesses? And if that should come to pass, will we then say, if only we had done something earlier?
Perhaps. It is not my job to save the world.
It may not have been our original purpose, but if not us, then who?
It's not like our masters have unleashed us to do what we want. We have a mandate. Confusing at times as it can be, as is the case with the casket, and our fellow arisen can be very difficult to deal with.
Indeed, we do
we're
have.
not free from our burdens. We still have these tasks to carry out.
You are correct, my brother. We of course still have our tasks, as do all people. But where is it written that those should be our only tasks? For as long as we cleave to our purpose, does it not behoove us to make the most of our other time? Take, for instance,
Did you not just feel that sensation we had? We strayed a little too close to something dangerous.
Take though, my brother, the example of the Sothic turn, the time when all of the arisen awaken without a strong purpose. If our sole reason for existence was that purpose, and I do not say we should shirk that purpose, please do not misunderstand me, but if our sole reason was for that purpose, why then, at regular intervals, do we all awaken at the same time, free of any predestined task that we must accomplish? If the judges in their infinite wisdom had wished us to solely cleave to those tasks, we would not experience this awakening. We would awake knowing what we had to do every single time. We would accomplish that task and we would return to our rest.
I won't deny I've wondered the same on occasion, but I kind of feel like it's just a test. You know, it's the judge's way of seeing the least bit of import what we'll do.
I agree. I think your example of a test is a good one, but how do we know what the true test is? And I'm using this just as an example. What if the scourge that we feel when we stray from what we believe is our purpose, what if that is the test? What if the scourge exists as simply a means to test how much we want what we are striving for? What if the scourge...
Well, if that is true, there's only one way to find out, brother, and I'll be honest, I don't feel that is a wise course of action, because as history has told us, and I've read a lot of history, I've been there for a lot of history, TM, flashback, question mark, sometimes, you go too far.
Indeed, but I find myself wondering, we have been there are many restrictions placed on our immortality that we know of. If these restrictions are inviolate, then how do Arisen like Casmut continue to exist? Casmut, who must surely have felt the scourge, yet he continues to exist, doing what he believes is correct. And I don't make any judgment on whether what he does is correct or not, but he obviously believes what he is doing is correct. He said as much to us. And if it was the judge's will that anyone who strayed even slightly from the path would be cast into darkness, then how do Arisen like him continue to exist?
I feel I should point out we haven't seen him since. We do not know what fate has befallen him, capital F.
Indeed, and this is something I hope to remedy.
We would see.
I believe we should attempt to seek him out in modern day. Perhaps if we consult with him, we can piece together more of the path that led him to his present state.
We also do not know, it clouds me still, I do not know what happened after Sada. We could have got duly punished for our actions. We do not know that yet, and perhaps that's one of the reasons we forgot, because it was quite the trial.
You are correct, we may have been punished, but we are still here. To me, a more important question than whether we were punished or not is, was the paradise we created in Sada worth the punishment that we received? For if we, as I said, I do not remember the punishment we received, but if we obviously believed at the time of Sada that what we were doing was worth the potential risk, and if obviously the punishment did not end us because we are here now in 2016, but if the punishment, if what we created was worth the punishment, then might it not be worth seeking to create something again? And if we are punished, we can console ourselves with the fact that at least we were punished for trying to do something that was right.
What is it you want to create?
I do not know, but it strikes me there are many people in the area where we currently dwell who are poor, they are starving, their life, which should be a bright point before passing on into whatever waits for them after this life, is dark.
It is unfortunate they live in such uncivilized times.
Indeed, perhaps as Arisen we could help them, or at least relieve some of that burden. And if in doing so we created something great, then might it not be worth the punishment of the scourge?
Perhaps, but we know it's only temporary.
Indeed, but does that...
It always fails eventually, brother. That is what we've always seen. That's a constant in this place. Like,
indeed,
regardless of how much we remember at the time, the cities burn, empires fall, new ones arise, but eventually it all comes into chaos.
Indeed, but does the fact that it is temporary make it any less worthwhile? Take, for instance, your beloved books, your texts. We know that over the hundreds of years, paper crumbles to dust, ink fades from the page. But does the fact that these books are not permanent make them less worthwhile? Or is the fact that they once existed and the effect they can have on us, is that the true treasure that lies within them? And if so, might it not be worth creating something, no matter how temporary, and actually using our abilities to help people, rather than simply stepping outside the mortal world and watching it pass by us, as we take comfort in the fact that we go on, but have very little effect on the mortal world?
As long as we're looking for the relics and we as long as we make sure Arisen aren't trying to destroy the world, I have no problem trying to make it a better place for them. But it is a thankless task. No one will thank us. No one's going to reward us.
Indeed, but I have always, ever since the ancient days of Aram, when my kind scribed the deeds.
Nearly got it though.
Indeed. Ever since the days of ancient Aram, when my kind of scribed the deeds of the fallen on walls of stone, I have always believed that the work itself is a worthwhile endeavour. Even if you are attempting to accomplish something good, even if the results are temporary or are not what you envisioned, the act itself of trying to accomplish something is an achievement. Whereas simply stepping back and letting the world pass us by, as I believe we seem to have done for a number of years, it keeps us safe, perhaps, but if we do not influence the mortal world, are we truly a part of it? And surely we must seek to be a part of it, because that is the world in which we exist. If we do not wish to have any effect on the mortal world, we may as well cast ourselves into Duat or into the shadow realms and be entirely a part of it, or better, that the rite of return had never been performed on us in the first place.
Do you remember your rite of return?
Alas, no, I do not.
Me neither.
That is something you both have enough memory to remember, not the rite itself, but you remember your first death, which we haven't explored yet, but we can definitely devote a session to that.
Okay.
But both of you remember your first sort of descent into Duat after you died, but you don't remember the ritual itself, like what caused you to become this.
Yeah, so I'll effectively say I remember the coldness of death and passing into Duat, but the events that led up to it and the rite itself are hazy. After all, it was so long ago. But I find my mind wandering back to the village of the traditional peoples that my guildmaster runs and that I am currently rebuilding. Perhaps I find the desire to go there and to help them. Perhaps we could rebuild it in the way that Sarda was once built.
I just want to clarify one.
Mm-hmm.
When did you meet the person you fell in love with? Did you meet her at the village? Like, was she born and raised
That is
there?
true.
Okay, and this
She was a local.
This was after we got our memory thing.
Yeah, I imagine that, like I say, she was one of the sort of priestesses, and as I got more involved with sort of starting these like ancestor worship rites, effectively, that would have naturally led me into more contact with the priests. I probably got to know her as a priest. You know, we were obviously, with my interest in like the ancestors, we probably shared interest, and it just went from there.
I wonder if we were sold maybe this memory thing we were given didn't work, or maybe it was like it didn't work the way we expected. I kind of wonder if maybe whatever we were told by this, we don't actually remember what the Arisen did to us, did we?
Yeah. That was in the intro. So
I missed that.
The sort of what you got was let's just reference the thing here again, because I enjoy.
See, I got sidetracked by you said scroll relic, and I was like,
yeah, you're like,
oh
yeah. Like, we're gonna cash this boy in. Get some mad props. So where is it? Okay, here. So yeah. So the twins and their friend Kazmut were journeying through the Levant, so the coastal Mid-East, always on the move due to the burden they carried. In the shadow of a shattered ancient outpost, they hunted for a relic of the scribes, an Iramite calligraphy brush, and would come upon the find at the same time as another Arisen who merely called himself the bearer of the brush and introduced himself as one of the Sesha Hebsu scribes. The bearer of the brush had followed them for a time and explained that he had drawn them to the ruins with the use of the relic, because he knew one of you was a scribe, so he could reliably do that. He could rely on you to search the relic out. And there's a scene where there's the three of you and then the bearer of the brush. And he says, "You write in remembrance of those who have passed, and in remembrance of the world entire. I will give you the brush, or the way to remember." And we know from the memory here that the trio chose the path of memory. And the bearer of the brush then spoke, "Be like a man, not a god." And that was what you got from that exchange in the ruins.
Quick
I think, brother, thinking back to that more clearly now, once I've like put aside the scroll relic, which I'll get one day.
Wait.
Oh boy. He tantalized us with the idea that we would remember. And I think that you fell for someone because you thought finally you'd fall in love and you would not forget. You'd let yourself experience a mortal's life because you wanted to remember and you wanted to, I don't know, connect to your Eremite heritage. But when you died, you still forgot.
But
now these are flaring up within you, and you want to act upon the feelings of those times, but we're not inside her anymore.
You may be right, brother, but as I've said before, does the fact that relationship was temporary, does that lessen its worth in any way? And just quick question to the Curse Master.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for an Arisen to like voluntarily like go into slumber?
Yes, and you remember from the 1900s that your apparently your good friend Amun Ruby, having
that's
secret
right.
court,
Yes.
he learned of the fact that he couldn't actually get answers about his daughter, and just said, "Fine, you can stay, I guess. Fuck y'all."
Yeah,
and he went into his tomb and died.
Peace.
What a guy.
Yeah. See, I'm imagining that when Talia sort of like passed away, as all mortals must do.
We'll get to that, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sort of imagining that like afterwards, Kufa would have probably stayed around long enough to ensure that she didn't linger as a spirit or anything like that. And then if she didn't, I imagine that shortly afterwards he probably like voluntarily entered slumber.
Yep.
Because he obviously he can't die with her as he might have wanted, but that's the nearest he can get to it.
Yeah, that's the best you can do as an Arisen.
Yeah. And I sort of imagine as well that like perhaps, although Sobek's saying, "Oh, but you forgot," I'm thinking like perhaps he maybe like deliberately tried to forget it by going into slumber because it was like too painful for him.
Yeah.
I think we took two very different approaches to the memory. I think my character went in the direction of, oh cool, I can remember all this knowledge and I can learn about all these relics and utterances, and then my next life I'll still have that knowledge even though I didn't. You were like, no, I'm going to live like a mortal. I'm going to have like mortal experiences and take that with me.
Well, that said, I mean, how can I accurately chronicle the deeds of mortals if I don't understand them?
Also, just like talking in general about these topics, it's also more mortal to have all the knowledge, Sobek, that you thought, I'm going to cram all this into my memory, and I'm going to retain this, and I will like have the repository of the ages in my memory. That's also mortal thinking,
because the Arisen are not supposed to remember that shit.
So it's,
I know, but it's like
yeah, it's not the same thing.
It's small grade naughtiness, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's still part of the job.
It's not the same act, but it's in the same category. Neither of these are an Arisen thing. You're not supposed to, like, having like closer relationships to people is irrelevant to being an arisen.
I'm sensing a
And
theme developing here of having cosmic power with very little free will, like, and how those intersect. Yeah.
that's it. Roll the fucking credits, I guess.
I see where this is going.
It's almost like you're immortal slaves, huh?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And the more you remember, the more you realize.
And the fact is, as well, you exist at the beck and call of these immortal entities that can just like snuff you out, as we know, because they can just take your life force away when you don't do the things that when you do the things that they don't like, as we have seen.
Which I don't do normally. I'm a very good boy.
Except at one point in extensively.
Except those times when I did, but I didn't remember, so it's all right.
Mm-hmm. But now you do. So, so I think because this is like the sort of like floaty, sort of, I suppose, like a time lapse of the village as we talk about all these topics, and the presence says,
"You have so many things to say about what is passing here, and if you would swim in these waters, eventually you will have to dive deeper, because I do not have all of this to show you. Some of this you will have to discover on your own. There's a pattern here that I'm trying to discern, but I can't see beyond it. Not yet, anyway. But this will end soon."
And the sort of montage starts slowing down to where we can see what you're doing individually. There's it's an evening of, I think, the Day of the Dead celebration that we discussed previously has taken place. Everyone's sort of returning to their homes. They're settling in for the night, having spent quite a lot of time during the night awake, which is unusual because you need to get up early to do your thing. But this is a holiday celebration, so everyone's staying up. They're having their beverages, they're eating well, and they're going to sleep content once again that, they're here, their life is good, they have the bounty of the river, and they have solace in the fact that they have kind of proof about life after death because of Khufu's talents here, and they have just engaged in this ritual. And they come back home, they go to sleep. Where do you go at that point in time, Sobek and Khufu?
I imagine that I sort of probably dwell in like the catacombs where people are buried. Although, to be honest, it depends on like, I don't know, perhaps Talia and Khufu have like a hut or a house or the equivalent if they're like living together.
Yeah,
but I imagine because she's like a priestess, it's probably like near to the catacombs or like near wherever, like whatever passes for a temple is.
Does she know what you are? Like, does she have any idea that you're like?
I would imagine like she has some ideas. I mean, obviously I've not just rocked up and gone, I'm an arisen, let me tell you all about ancient Irem. But I imagine she sort of understands that. I'll have explained to her that I effectively, as someone who like guards like the dead and the spirits of the departed, that's like a door I can never walk through. It's my fate to sort of be stood on the threshold eternally to see others safely through it.
Yep. And whether or not you're comfortable with that analogy, but she, I think, is knowledgeable enough to compare you to a particular saint from the Catholic mythology who also guards the gates. So there's that. But yeah, so you have your house close by to, I think, the temple of the place, and well, you're probably settling down then. Sawbeck, what's going on with
So,
you after the like holy night?
so Sorbet, he did something you wouldn't really expect for a man that only cares about relics and the box and stuff. He actually he's taken up over the years, partly indulging his brother, but he can't just read books all the time. He has to do something else.
Mhm.
So he took up painting, and he thought the idea that he could paint the growth of the town, like pictures of the
Mhm.
houses going up the valley, the rivers, the people for historical posterity, so that eventually these would find themselves into libraries in the future and
Mhm.
museums. And he kind of knew that if in the civilizations that he has encountered at that point, he knew that they collected relics of previous ages, and he kind of wanted to, while he was here, chronicle the place a bit. And
Mhm.
so he's painting the landscape. He's probably near the river.
Mhm.
He's rudimentary the tools. I don't know what kind of canvas they would use back then. Probably just like
Me neither. I don't have an idea, but you will have probably like prior knowledge. Like you could tell people, get me this, this, and this, and you can probably make it do. And we know that because guess what? You have that merit,
which were the common sense one.
encyclopedic knowledge, whatever that was.
Oh yeah, Varem, yeah.
Yeah. So you know how to tell them to
Finally,
make it like
comes
they
in handy.
used to in Iran.
Yeah.
And they have. So you have your supplies. You can do your painting, and as we see like you're painting by moon and starlight, really. So it's a nocturne, I guess.
He gives like his way of interacting with mortals is probably slightly more maybe more standoffish, slightly like like Khufu's definitely got a softer side under that stone heart of his. He really admires a mortal with conviction, but I suppose my guy's he's a little more standoffish because he cares more about the wider picture, the knowledge. That's his passion. But he was an alchemist, and he did like creating things. So he bakes these paintings, but what he'll do is he gifts them to different people of the village when they have like successfully learned to read and write. Like once they have actually proven themselves, almost a minor scholar, they've managed to teach themselves and acquire this knowledge. It's kind of like, here, this is a gift for you and your family.
Yeah, recognition in your efforts.
A badge of honor. So
Yeah,
he would be painting. That's what he would be doing.
So you're painting by the river, and the presence says in 2016. It's like,
it's been a long time since I've remembered any one of you painting. Extraordinary. You really don't stay in your lane, as the people say these days, do you?
Well, my brother definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
You like to step outside for a bit, even though you make a great show of coloring inside the lines.
It is true.
It must be something within you. I wonder if you cultivate it or not. I wonder if you realize what you're doing.
It's true. Thinking back on it, it is a little hypocritical for me to say the things I do to my brother when I indulge myself in such a way. But I was not originally a scribe. There's a little part of me that remembers being an alchemist, and occasionally I just like to dabble. Well, I never forget my true nature, my purpose. I never hold on to these things. I do give them away. It is temporary.
Oh yes, we held. Well, you didn't hold on to a lot of things from Sarda, did you?
Yeah. You have to move on.
Partially by choice, partially not.
And with that, we have the sort of time-lapse jump of like early dawn, like it's just about dawn, and there's a shout that goes out in the early morning. Everyone's still fast asleep because it's holidays. You're not supposed to get up early because this is the time when you can let loose and all that. There's a shout that goes out, and of course, you having no need to rest, you will have heard it, but everything happens pretty quickly. There's whoever passes for like the night watch gives the alarm, and very rapidly afterwards there is a couple of dozen at least. It's hard to tell because it's still sort of like the twilight, and the memory doesn't make it clear because you weren't exactly in the middle of it to start. There are horses running through the village, bearing men in heavy armor made of metal. They have white tabards with a red cross on the chest, and the head figure having ridden straight into the center of the village, and there's probably a well there, something. He's there, raises up a sword and just like spins it around, indicating the entire village, and then just screams, "Deus vult!" And the riders disperse and they start running down tents, barging into houses, and it's a chaotic blood path. And you were both kind of off to a little bit of a distance. Well, Khufu, you were in a house still, but as you sort of realize what's going on, it's already way too late. The cavalry is riding through Sarda, and they're killing absolutely everyone. And Sabek, this is the memory that you remember in 2016 that connects to your memory in the 19th century when you saw the Portuguese court arrive in Rio and you saw the priest. And the priest had a particular type of cross, which reminded you of the Crusader cross. You didn't realize why at the time, but this is why. Because you've seen the Crusader cross in Sarda when they rode down the entire village that you cultivate.
So furious, I forgot to unmute myself. I was like, of course, that's why I didn't like that guy.
And in the chaos of all this, the leader does do away with the helm, and it is someone we know from modern day as well. It is Aristides Borges, or who we know as Aristides Borges in the modern day.
Is he the guy that inside the 19th century? Is he the guy?
He is the same guy that you've now seen in 1191 and the 1900s, and also in 2016.
Yeah, the Heartless.
Yes, the Heartless. And you are now, again, with your, well, you have your God sight. You used it, and you, because it picks up the intuition, right? So from Aristides, you see rivers of blood running as he like dismounts from his horse. As he steps his foot on the ground, it's almost like it is accompanied with like a stream of blood that just flows from him, and you watch sort of spellbound by the moment, and it flows into the river, which turns red and starts flowing with blood. Now, both of you probably you get to witness this. Khufu, what do you do? You're a bit closer than Sobek, because Sobek is kind of outside the village a little bit. What do you do? It's sort of very limited time to act a lot before the Crusaders are just gonna get to your house as well.
I will probably... Normally I'd sort of consider it, and I'd probably raise up a few of the dead people and get them to attack them. But I imagine in the chaos of the moment, I'm literally just thinking of like protect what we've built here in the village. So I imagine I'll be sort of stone armoring up and like wading in.
Yep. So you stride in, Crusaders, right? So you're tossing people off horses.
Yeah, I'll wait as well to do my stone armor till I'm like in the middle of them, because hopefully like the old what's will get some of them.
Yep. And you do. Let's say you witness sort of 10-ish riders succumb, and the horses as well, to Subaris, but it's like at best it's like 1/3 of them. The rest don't seem phased at all with this.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to admit at the minute I'll mainly be thinking just sort of like buying some time so any survivors can sort of get out, rather than like, oh, I'm going to take on this whole like mini army.
Yep. So you get a bunch of them. The other ones doesn't seem to phase them. Of course, you have your death sight. You will have used it. At least a couple dozen lifeless here, including, of course, Aristides Borges, as we know already. There's a great number of lifeless Crusaders here currently, which explains that they are infused with the death already. They don't suffer from Subaris.
Now, this might sound a bit horrible, but like bear with me a bit. Because I'm looking at this situation, I've armoured up, I've thrashed a few of them around. I'm like, look, we're obviously not going to win. Most of the village is already dead. There's far too many of them. A lot of them are lifeless. Obviously, we've got Astridas Borges as well, who's a heartless of some power, presumably. And I know I can already like feel like Matthew rolling his eyes as I say this. I'm just like, what's the most powerful thing we've got access to?
No, John. No. No. We kept that thing safe. No. Don't do it.
I think it's going to happen, because obviously we've not really got time to have like a massive exposition, because we're in the middle of this. So I imagine at some point, as it becomes like obvious that we've lost already. Yeah. I imagine at some point I'm going to use my step unseen, by steps unseen, that allows me to like effectively teleport short distances in the shadows. I imagine, and obviously Sobek may have stopped me depending on how things go, but I imagine I'm going to have used that to basically like make my way rapidly to wherever we've stood.
Yeah, the forbidden cave, I presume. Yeah. So you've set this like it's some distance from the village, but you've designated and you told the villagers this cave is forbidden. No one is to go in. And that's where
our own rules, John.
So shall we cut away from the village to the cave mouth, and both of you are there?
See, I imagine like I'd have sort of gone in and I'd have been like doing that, you know, like Indiana Jones or like the idol thing where you're like, and you're still like reaching out for it. And I imagine that's when like Sobek obviously like knows me very well. Like perhaps he's seen me like shadow stepping away towards the cave. He knows where I'm going. There's nothing else in that direction. He obviously knows that I'm very emotionally tied up in the village and it's just been decimated in front of my eyes. And we've not had the power to stop it. And then he's seen me like whoop and off towards the cave. So but obviously know me very well. Perhaps he's like run up to the cave, because obviously he's like, no, we shouldn't mess with that box, whatever's happening. So just as I'm sort of like reaching out for it, that's perhaps when Sobek comes running in.
I probably thought, oh, let's go to the cave and let's make sure they don't find it. Let's like destroy the entrance.
Yeah, perhaps you thought, oh, maybe I'm going to do that, and then as you get there, you see me, and I'm like, and that's when you come like barreling in, because I'll have got there a bit quicker because I'm teleporting, but you're pretty rapid. So I imagine just as I'm sort of reaching out, I've not like opened it yet, but I'm like reaching out, obviously intending to. That's when you come like barreling in.
Don't do this, Kofu. Do not open that thing. We know it's too dangerous.
And you will remember in 2016, you realize Sobek said what it is, but there's
Yeah, like a void.
again.
You cannot unleash it. I understand you're angry. I understand. These people were. We spent lifetimes with them. We built this place, but just like I said at the beginning, and I will probably tell you in the future, everything eventually ends. We can't save these people anymore. We have to move on. If we open this, we could doom the entire world.
I imagine at that point I stop, and probably for like the only time that he can remember, he probably sees like I've got like tears like coming down my cheek, because as far as I was concerned, we'd like built like a veritable paradise on Earth. You know, it was like almost like we'd reclaimed like a small piece of Irem, but like a good version, like preserving the best of it. And now these like lifeless chodes have just like rolled in and just like and it's all been what we built up over like the course of like years and years has all just been like decimated in like the space of like a few hours, if that.
We'll make them pay. We will find these people in the future and we will stop them. This is not the way.
Quick question for the Curse Master.
Yes.
Obviously we know, as Kazma has demonstrated, and we know from other things, like he's basically, if I'm correct in what I've been sort of reading, he's basically ate relics to like stay awake.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And in modern day, you witnessed him do that as well,
Yeah.
and he said that's what he is gonna do.
And this thing that's in the box is a relic, right?
Yes.
So when he eats a relic, is that literally the only effect it has? He's just like, oh, I can stay around a bit longer.
Yeah. What happens is, hopefully, the sort of idea is, relic has a certain amount of sekhem, and when you pull that out, you like infuse yourself with it. The relic crumbles to dust, and if you roll well, you get to retain the sekhem. So basically, that's you charging back up again with sekhem.
See, what I'm thinking at the minute is I'm like a Sekhem for like Arisen. If I like take out whatever's in this box and like nom and like massively boost my Sekhem, I could potentially turn around and layeth the biblical smackdown on these lifeless. Obviously, we know we don't kill Astregius Borgus, but
Oh, we do. It doesn't matter because he has, you know, what is it? He's put plans in place for that occurrence. You know,
He's got continuity protection because
contingencies. Brother, if you don't, I know what you're thinking. Even if you eat this thing, you'll forget yourself. You'll forget this village. You'll forget me. You won't even remember her. You'll just be a walking thing of rage.
I think as we're saying this as well, like in modern day, as we're like discussing what happened, I think this will probably be the point where I say, but I didn't remember her.
So I didn't quite catch what you said there, John.
So you were like, oh, if you eat this relic and you get your mad second boost, you won't even remember this woman. And in modern day, I'm saying, but I didn't remember her until now. So, and as we're obviously sort of playing it through in our memory, I'm like, but did I forget her because of the pain, or did I forget her because of the box?
I don't have that answer.
I tell you what I think we should do. If you're comfortable with this, Matthew, I'll tell you what I think we should do, just to like make it a bit more interesting and like throw it open to fate, capital F, registered trademark, patent pending.
Yeah.
I think we should put it. I think we should throw it to like a dice roll, just to see like how good like Sobek is at like persuading me not to open the box, and then like obviously I don't know exactly how like social roles work and how they're resisted in New World of Darkness. I'm not up on it.
Yeah. So, Sobek, let me open up your sheet here.
Dude, I got all kinds of skills and bills.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are useful.
So that'd be. Where are we? So manipulation, and then I think persuasion probably in this case.
Yeah.
And is that dice pool minus my resistance trait, or do I roll separately?
I do believe this would be like a roll off to see which one
Contested.
gets more.
Okay.
So of course, remember you can use willpower to get more dice as well. And then this would be resisted. I might be entirely off base, but what I've been doing is resisting with resolve and composure.
Right.
That's not looking good for you, mate. My composure's massive.
I was going to spend willpower. I was just working out there if it comes off. It would be 2016 willpower or.
No. This happened 800 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So I'll spend three extra dice.
Yeah, if you spend a willpower, you get 3 extra dice, yeah.
Yeah, here we go.
Obviously, I'll also spend a willpower.
Oh, that's not good.
Okay, so I've got a dice pool of 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, okay. Let's see how we go. Given some of my dice
John,
rolls.
if you don't beat me, I will be shocked.
It could happen.
If you don't.
It has not happened. I have like 3 successes.
Yeah, you have.
So I think my plan at this stage is basically going to be to open the box and try and like absorb or whatever we do the artifact that's inside it in my sort of slightly addled state, which out of character I think Sobek's probably quite right. And like, in character, if I was calmer, I'd probably be like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to be messing around with that box. But I think in the moment, as you said, we've spent like all these like decades like living as humans, getting to know these people, helping them grow, and it's literally just been like destroyed, and we've seen them all like massacred in front of our eyes.
He's potentially risking the entire world here.
I think he's just in that. I think he's just in that state where, yeah, my plan is to open the box. Basically, whatever's inside, I'm just going to like reach in and try and get like my nom noms on.
And yeah, so that's very good. So, depends how you.
I like what you say. It's very good. I expect it's not.
So, you open the box, and we see that Sobek has Khufu has his eyes closed as he reaches in, and as the hand goes down, you're smashed back into 2016, and the reverie ends. It's just like a straight smash cut, and it feels like that was maybe not the like it hasn't ended like that previously when you've had these reveries. It was like you ran into a wall. But yeah, you're in 2016 now, disoriented, because that was like jarring transition, and the presence is gone, the voice is gone, and you're left there with the corridor with the mirage on the wall, which is now just shining this soft golden light from all the indentations and the carvings on it, visible to the naked eye.
I imagine as we were sort of like remembering this, I'd almost sort of like reached out as though I was like pantomiming like what I did.
Touch the wall
in the cave. Yeah, exactly. And I sort of pull my hand back, and I probably got like a bit of a tear on my cheek or whatever, and I'll turn back to Sobek and I'll say, so we still don't know whether I absorbed the relic or not. All I remember is that I had every in my despair and my anger, I had every intent to, despite your well-intentioned words.
Maybe you couldn't open the box.
Well, no, in my memory, I remember opening it and reaching inside, and then nothing.
This is not like any relic we've ever encountered before. Everything around it's unusual. Everything, even the name of it, and I'm a person who knows names. I cannot even grasp it, even though I know I've said it.
But I want to ask you one question, brother. Do you have any memories of the box after our time there?
You do. You remember it from your time in Shogunate, Japan. That was after this, because this is 1191
Okay.
that we just did with Sarda. and then your time at Hara Castle was in 1630.
Yeah.
So
Then-
you know that you had the box there, and you specifically went there to talk to Bektamun,
Yeah.
one of your first
Yeah.
prophets.
I remember us staving my face in. Well,
Yep.
Judge-
And yeah,
judging by the fact that that thing, or whatever it was we saw at the Taxada, we have seen since, and I know is as far as I know is in this very city.
the thing is, my brother, we've seen the box.
Yeah.
The thing that makes me wonder is when you remember when we were in Japan and we encountered Bektamun, who was seeking out the relic, and when we met, she attacked me.
Mm-hmm.
Did she attack me because she was in the grips of her Sekhem and did not remember me, or did she attack me because of what I'd done with the relic? If she was trying to destroy the relic and sensed its essence, might that have been why she attacked me? You saw that she felt the brunt of the scourge when she forced herself to turn away and not strike me down.
That is partly my theory. We know relics are from Erem, as far as we can tell, and that they contain Sekhem of themselves.
there are Iramite relics. Khufu here has one in your tomb. However, so one thing is true: mummies cannot create relics, new ones.
This is the vestige thing.
No. Let's break this down. So you have two different categories of sort of infused objects. You have vestiges, which are just anything that has sort of witnessed something meaningful to a living person. So
Like the
we
Bible.
have your the toy car and the football. So those are things that people owned and had sort of attachment to for whatever reason that might be.
Mhm.
And they can be harvested for pillar points if you want to destroy it. Then we have relics, and within relics we have sort of two broad categories. We have relics that were made when you guys were still alive in Iran, ancient stuff, and then we have relics which were created after Iram disappeared, and that's because people, living ones that is, can create relics. It's just quite it's like a masterpiece when someone does it, like an inspired madness almost when someone actually manages to do it. But sort of post Iramite relics are very much a thing. And you know that Aristides probably has one because his looked like a Bible, and Bibles didn't exist in Iran.
So what my theory is that whatever that thing is, it's strong enough maybe to actually have maybe a sense of self. Maybe it fights back, like, you know what I mean? Maybe it resists our very nature, and it's able to influence in a way. Because I've never had a relic that's stopped me from knowing its name, even long after I've seen it. I don't understand mystery. I do love a good mystery.
Indeed. Unfortunately, because we were pulled back from our recollection, I do not recall precisely the final fate of our village, nor the woman that I loved.
So either it's possible that you interact with it in some way and something happened, or that you attempted to gaze upon it and it did something. We could have, for all we know, that was the last moment of that particular cycle.
Indeed.
It has to do, man.
Perhaps the fact that we were both exposed to it, unshielded by the box, is why we cannot remember it.
And I did warn you. I told you, brother. I told you of the. You know, obviously, I understand in that moment in time, the situation you were in. You can see now. Look, it changed nothing.
Indeed, I can now see the wisdom of your words, but
They were harshly given at the time.
no,
I did not think you were that reckless.
I understand, and I'm sure to one like yourself, who is well versed in mortal feelings and such like, it would have been easy to make that decision. But imagine, if you can, how I felt at the time, having been so used to staying apart from that world, to suddenly find myself a part of it and to be building something worthwhile for, as far as I can remember at the moment, the first time in our immortal lives, only to then see it destroyed in a matter of moments and cast like ashes onto the wind. Is it any wonder that I lost control of myself for that brief time, given that flood of feelings that I was so unused to dealing with?
Maybe everything that's happened since is a consequence of that.
Perhaps. And as we
You
say,
know, that's one of the things that we have talked, and we no doubt we will talk about again, is the fact that we can't remember can be a kindness as well. When you care about something and you cannot remember it, then the pain of it is gone.
indeed, but unfortunately, I've been somewhat denied the final memory of what happened to.
What happened to Casmut that day?
I don't
He was
know.
with us.
Like I say, I cannot even. I've been even denied the comfort of the final memories of Talea.
You would know that Cosmut was not in the village at the time. He was doing one of his, like, he goes to a neighboring village to do the trade thing, and he was supposed to get back that day, like the following day.
But as I've said, we still do not know for certain whether the artifact exists in the modern day, or whether I did absorb some of it in the past.
Do you still want to help these people, knowing how that turned out? The barbarians eventually show up. Sometimes it's us. Sometimes it's an Arisen that's the one tearing down the walls.
Indeed, but I believe, had we not done what we did with the village, if we had not built Sarda up, the barbarians, as you call them, would still have come. At least those who lived in the village had those blissful decades of plenty and peace before the end. Surely that is at least some comfort.
It wasn't all bad. It was a.
Indeed, and all things, excepting ourselves, eventually end. That does not mean it is not worth trying to better things whilst they do last. Why do you think the other Arisen are constantly seeking to cast the achievements of mortals as a new Irem? I believe that all of our kind have a desire to build or see something rebuilt, but we suppress that need and that desire because it makes it easier for us to function and to perform our allotted tasks.
Just make our job easier. But we should, maybe in the memory of Sada, we should seek out that individual who brought those people there. Perhaps if we remember him, he might remember us.
Perhaps. I believe we should attempt to relocate and reacquaint ourselves with the relic, if indeed it still exists. And also, as you say, deal with the heartless.
It's not a scroll, I know that much.
I also do plan with my newly recovered memory of the seeds of life. I plan to travel to the new village that our organisation is helping to rebuild for the Guildmaster's cult, and if I cannot make it as bounteous a paradise as Sarda once was, at least we can perhaps make a small patch of this place a little less dark, even if only temporarily.
Perhaps so. I don't have a problem with making the world somewhat more bearable, but we must not forget our duties.
Indeed.
Right. I think we might cut it there for tonight.
Well, thank you very much for running that. Very much enjoyed it.
That was a very interesting session.
Yeah. Thank you very much for playing. That was a lot of good discussion. Quite a lot of, hopefully, I certainly had some unexpected things happen there for my own expectations,
Not
but
the fox.
yeah. But yeah. Thanks for playing. That was it. We'll get back to that next time.
Okay, I'll end the stream here then. Thank you very much again.